like to experience what is it like to have a millennial father in the age of internet, online gaming, and virtual identities. As we said, a former basketball celebrity, model, businessman, former barangay official, and a TV host. And more importantly, a very young husband and father of two girls. He was a spokesperson for the Live Pure movement. Now to share with us how a millennial keeps his virtue and values intact in a modern world, let us hear and welcome Mr. Chris Chu.
Hello. Ayan, unmute na
Hello.
ako. Yan. Hindi ako maka-unmute kanina. Hello, thank you for that introduction. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Thank you for having me here. To all our honorable religious leaders, mga lay leaders, sa lahat ng nanonood all over the Philippines. Ang laking event pala nito. Congratulations. Thank you for having me here. Actually, ang dami kong natutunan from the previous speakers, no? Kaila Sir Joe and Miss Mila, kay June, Sir June. Ang dami ko pong nasulat as notes, no, na very useful sa relationship. I mean, you guys have so many more years of experiences, and definitely we can learn so much from you. Thank you for sharing. At tawa po ako dun sa mga kwento nyo, Sir June. Today, I was asked to speak about spiritual leadership in the millennial family. Una-una po, I do not claim to be an expert in this field. No, alam niyo naman po, like was introduced, I'm a relatively new dad, a young dad. I've been married for 8 years to my wife Clarice, and I have two daughters, Amanda and Mary. They're 5 and 3 years old. No, and siguro today I'd like to share some of my thoughts on the subject nga, which sana naman you'll find useful, no? Hindi ko lang sigurado kung ilan ang mga millennial parents na nandito ngayon, but siguro naman at sana makatulong din ito sa mga parents na may mga millennial na anak or Gen Z na anak, no? So I guess an appropriate starting point would be to try to describe the millennials and how our generation is different from the other generations, from the Gen X and some mga nauna. So millennials are said to channel our energies towards meaningful na pasukan, drive change, and so on. Sorry, how's my internet? Yeah, okay. Now, because we grew up amidst the height of the internet or information technology revolution, we're always connected and have an incredible amount of information to deal with. Diba? So certainly there are benefits to this, but how about the threats that they pose? And the scarier part to me is, do we actually realize the harmful effects that are slowly seeping in, affecting our well-being, and maybe even our happiness? No? Our generation grew up with social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at ngayon may TikTok na. Alam nyo yun, yung TikTok, mga parents, baka kailangan magkaroon na rin kayo ng account para malaman nyo kung anong nagpo-post ng ating mga anak sa TikTok. Which means na if we are not hyper-aware, no, our measure of success can easily be shaped based on what we see online or what society dictates. The number of follows, likes, comments that we get, no, the size of our bank accounts, having big titles or positions, going on family vacations all over the world, looking glamorous, having cute kids, cute babies, diba? Our lives can so easily be compared with other people. And sad to say, this can also make us unsatisfied, unhappy, or even depressed if we don't have the maturity to handle it. No? Because of the internet, we millennials have so many choices, diba? Like from what food to order now, what job to pursue, where to go on our next vacation, what to buy on Shopee or Lazada, what to watch on Netflix or YouTube. And if we want to watch a series now on Netflix, you can watch the whole thing in one night or in 2 days or in 1 week, diba? Pag nanonood tayo ng ang probinsyano, maghihintay ka bukas. Isang episode bukas. Pero ngayon, lahat pwede mong panoorin in one night. Tapos ang buong season, no? So our wants can be satisfied just by a click. And the problem here is that once we get used to it, it becomes all about me, me, me. And not just that, what I want, I get it now with one click. Sabi rin nila na tayong mga millennials are also entitled, no? Because mommy and daddy always got our backs. Sometimes a little bit too much. Technology and the internet also makes us so connected to our social groups, our friends, mga work group natin, prayer group, mommy group, golf groups, kung ano-ano pa mga groups. We are bombarded with all sorts of news. Sometimes we cannot even tell kung fake news ba ito o totoo, di ba? Being so connected and knowing too many things can bring toxicity to our lives. Clearly, this culture of being in control of our lives, knowing everything, getting everything we want at an instant can be challenging in the long run, especially with our mental and emotional state. Once we become uncertain of the outcome, nagiging anxious tayo, di ba? Pag hindi natin nakukuha yung gusto natin right away, nagiging impatient tayo, irritated, annoyed. Pag napapagod tayo, when we get tired, we jump to the next job or relationship, no? Instead of trying to understand, to forgive, and to work things out. Diba? Commitment, patience, acceptance, giving up of our own wants for other people. These are not among the best traits of millennials, including myself, I would say. Of course, there are a few aberrations to this, no? But with the kind of environment and culture that we live in, it can be more difficult to develop these virtues. So all of a sudden, one day, after a lifetime of caring about kung ano yung gusto ko, anong gusto kong gawin, ano gusto ko i-pursue, no? We millennials become mommies and daddies bigla, di ba? Ngayon, may bata na, may child na. It's suddenly not about me anymore, no? So, how do I deal with this? Wala nang daddy or mommy to watch my back, di ba? Or actually, minsan, tinatawagan pa rin natin si mommy at daddy para mag-alaga at magbantay ng bata, di ba? But ultimately, this child is my responsibility now. No? Parents are the most important guidance we have in life. Everything we become in life basically stems from the foundation built or the values instilled by our parents. For a millennial, transitioning from being single to becoming a parent can be perhaps more challenging than previous generations. For the next generation, yung mga Gen Z, these are the, I think, early 20s and younger, no? For sure, mas mahirap pa ito. No? It will be even more challenging. That's if they still, want to have kids. Baka ayaw na nila. That is why all the more, the need for spirituality in the family becomes more and more important. And there has to be a leader in the family. Sabi nga nila June, nila Joe, and Mila. In my case, no, I have to admit that it's not me solely. It's actually a shared responsibility between my wife and I. And I'd like to believe we do complement each other. Being a spiritual leader does not mean going to mass every day or leading the rosary and Bible studies every day. I mean, I can do all that, yeah. But if I easily get pissed off, no, mabilis ako magalit, I lose my temper fast, I judge other people, I hold grudges, no, nagiging defensive ako when people try to correct me, then I'm not being a good spiritual leader, diba? A spiritual leader to me is someone who is emotionally mature because of his or her deep understanding of our faith. It is being hyper aware of oneself, his or her strengths, and especially our flaws, acknowledging them and having the humility and the sincere desire to improve, to become better. Because we know that that is what God wants of us. I'm really inspired by my wife, Clarice. No, I'm not saying this because she's listening. I don't think she's listening, but that's because I say that because in reality, siya yung mas consistent pagdating sa mga prayers and meditation. She shares her learnings with me, so we can discuss and exchange ideas. Admittedly, my spiritual journey has always been quite inconsistent, a struggle to say the least. My mom is very religious and introduced us to the Catholic faith at a very early age, and we really appreciate that. But thank goodness also that God brought angels in my life, no? Friends who deliberately go out of their way to encourage praying together, attending these retreats, doctrine classes. No? Nowadays, yung mga kabataan, ang dami ang gusto maging influencer, 'di ba? Sa social media, lahat gusto maging influencer. Um, Kaya we have to actually, having said that, we have to make sure that we surround ourselves with good influence people who will ultimately bring us closer to God. Parenting is daunting and a huge responsibility. I'm still at an early stage as my daughters are only 5 and 3, as I said earlier, but I can imagine the pain, disappointment, frustration that it can bring about, a parent, and vice versa if we parents screw up or mess up. But being spiritually mature helps us see these so-called setbacks as perhaps blessings or even gifts from God. No matter how awfully bad things may be, understanding that this is part of God's better plan for us will certainly allow us to handle disappointments better and act accordingly. Without God, we can easily be weighed down or even broken down. In my spiritual journey, I can say that it is the disappointments and the adversities in my career, relationships over the years that has ironically brought me closer to God. I am blessed that God somehow brought the correct, mature, kind-hearted people to guide and mentor me. Let's now identify and cherish these people in our lives. So there was a study published by two European researchers, I think it's around early 2000s, on the importance and impact of fathers in influencing the spiritual life of a child. And this, again, is in line with what our previous speaker said. No? When a mother, ito yung statistics, no? When a mother and father attend church regularly, so pareho, nanay, tatay, nagsisimba or nag-practice ng kanilang spiritual life regularly, 33% of their children will end up attending church regularly. Okay? Ngayon, kapag ang mother lang ang nag-attend ng church regularly, but the father does not attend church at all, only 2% of their children will end up attending church regularly. When a father attends church regularly, but the mother naman does not attend at all, 44% of the children will end up attending church regularly. So you can see the statistics. No, I hindi ko lang nakuha kung exact publication. No, but with the statistics that we see here, I guess we can say that to all of the fathers out here now, we really have a huge role to play. And at the end of the day, all of us parents want our kids to be authentically happy. Diba? We want our kids to be able to discern well and value the right things in life. I mean, who doesn't? So how do we impart that? Well, for a start, we cannot give what we don't have. We certainly need to practice what we preach and become the best role models. So, yun lang po. Thank you again sa lahat ng nakinig. Thank you for allowing me to share sa mga nag-imbita sa akin. Thank you and have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chris Chu, for giving us hope that the next generation can indeed be good stewards of our families. Thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Chris Chu, for giving us hope that the next generation can indeed be good stewards of our families. Thank you again.